Before we begin, a warning. This episode contains discussion of violence against women, including the murder of Indigenous women and systemic failures. Listener discretion is advised. In this episode of Northern Dark, we tell the story of Ashlee Shingoose, a mother from St. Teresa Point First Nation, remembered in Winnipeg as Buffalo Woman before her name was confirmed. We'll explore her life, the 2022 serial killings, the search for her remains, and the fight for justice that continues. We begin with a name that carried through silence before it was spoken again. Buffalo Woman. That was the name elders gave when she was still unidentified, a spirit honored through ceremony so she would not be forgotten. Nearly 3 years later, in March of 2025, police confirmed who Buffalo Woman was. Her name was Ashlee Shingoose. She was 31 years old, a daughter, a mother, a loved one. Ashlee grew up in St. Teresa Point First Nation, one of 8 children. Her mother, Teresa, remembered her as caring, someone who took on a motherly role to her younger twin sisters. She was always a loving person. She wasn't much older than her twin sisters, but she acted like their mom. In 2016, Ashlee moved to Winnipeg. It wasn't easy, but she was trying to make a new life. She had 3 children. For a time, she managed. Her mother recalled that she was making it good, but life in the city was harsh, and eventually she began to struggle. Her father, Albert, never gave up searching for her after she went missing in 2022. He even gave police DNA samples, hoping for an answer. In his own words, he admitted, "Sometimes I think I shouldn't be around here. I should be out there looking." And Ashlee herself left a message behind, a voicemail to her mother, carrying both hope and fear. In it, she said, "Mom, I'm really trying my best, and I will never stop trying. I am doing this for myself, my health, and my children. And I am pregnant, and I'm afraid that if I keep on doing what I am doing, it's all gonna go bad." These weren't words meant for memorials. They were the words of a woman still fighting, still hoping to build a future. This is who Ashlee was, before the headlines, before the silence. But while Ashlee was holding on to hope, a darker story was already beginning to unfold in Winnipeg, one that would soon reveal the city's deadliest serial killings in decades. In the weeks after police announced the 4th victim, she remained nameless in the public record. For many, that silence was unbearable. To leave her without a name was to leave her unseen. So elders stepped forward. They called her Mashkode Bijiki Ikwe, Buffalo Woman. The name carried weight. In Anishinaabe teachings, the buffalo symbolizes strength, provision, and survival. To be given that name was to restore dignity, to place her within a spiritual lineage, and to remind the world that she was more than evidence in a courtroom. At vigils, that name was spoken aloud. Community members prayed for Buffalo Woman, laid down tobacco, and lit candles. A red ribbon dress hung in her honor, a silent witness in the space where her presence was missing. And soon, Buffalo Woman became more than a name. She became a rallying point. Families of missing and murdered Indigenous women carried her name at marches. Activists invoked it in calls for justice. It was a reminder that no one should be invisible, that even when the system withheld her identity, community would not. Through naming, she was seen. Through ceremony, she was remembered. Buffalo Woman became a symbol, not just of loss, but of persistence, of resilience, of cultural strength standing against erasure. But her true name was still waiting to be spoken. And that revelation would not come until nearly 3 years later, when science and persistence uncovered the identity of Buffalo Woman, Ashlee Christine Shingoose. And it was DNA, combined with the actions of Jeremy Skibicki himself, that brought that truth to light. For nearly 3 years, Buffalo Woman's identity remained unknown. Her name was spoken in prayer, her presence honored in ceremony, but her family still waited in silence. The breakthrough came in March 2025. Forensic investigators matched DNA recovered from a cigarette butt in Jeremy Skibicki's apartment. That DNA linked directly to the family of a woman who had been missing since March of 2022. That woman was Ashlee Shingoose. Police confirmed the results publicly. For the family, the news was both devastating and relieving. Her father, Albert, described the moment simply. It was a happy cry. We looked at each other and we cried. After years of waiting, their worst fears were finally named, and Ashlee was brought out of the shadows. The identification was more than evidence. It was restoration. Buffalo Woman was no longer anonymous. She was Ashlee, a daughter, a sister, a mother. And with her name came a new weight for her family and community, the public recognition of their grief, and the beginning of a more painful, more personal chapter. Because once Ashlee's identity was confirmed, the spotlight turned not only to her case, but to the people who loved her, and the impact her loss left behind. For Ashlee's family, the confirmation in March 2025 brought heartbreak and relief in equal measure. They had suspected the truth, but now it was undeniable. Her father, Albert, said it simply. It was a happy cry. He and his wife, Teresa, looked at one another and wept when police told them Buffalo Woman was Ashlee. The long wait for answers had ended, but it also meant their daughter was never coming home alive. Teresa remembered her daughter not as a victim, but as a girl who had always carried love. She was always a loving person, she said. She wasn't much older than her twin sisters, but she acted like their mom. For Albert, the grief carried a weight of responsibility. In his own words, "Sometimes I think I shouldn't be around here. I should be out there looking." His words captured the helplessness of a father who gave DNA, who waited years, and who still believed he should have done more. Ashlee's own voice remains behind in that voicemail to her mother. "Mom, I'm really trying my best. I will never stop trying. I am doing this for myself, my health, and my children. And I am pregnant, and I'm afraid that if I keep on doing what I am doing, it's all going to go bad." Those words echo now with the knowledge of what was to come. They are not just the voice of someone lost. They are the words of a woman still fighting, still hoping to survive. Beyond her family, Ashlee's community also grieved. Vigils were held across Winnipeg and beyond, where Buffalo Woman's name, and later Ashlee's, were spoken aloud in ceremony. A red ribbon dress was placed to represent her in court. A buffalo headdress and feather, along with tobacco, were set in her honor. These acts were not symbolic gestures. They were cultural affirmations that she was present, seen, and remembered. Her naming had already become a rallying cry in marches and advocacy events, and once Ashlee's identity was confirmed, her story carried even more urgency. For families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, she was no longer the faceless Buffalo Woman. She was Ashlee Shingoose, a mother, a daughter, and a voice in the chorus of injustice that has stretched across generations. For her family, the grief remains raw. For her community, her life continues to stand as a call to action, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, voices must not be silenced. And in the halls of justice, those voices would soon take center stage, as the legal system tried to reckon with the magnitude of these murders. By 2024, Jeremy Skibicki had been convicted of 4 counts of first-degree murder, but for Ashlee's family, the trial had come too soon. Her identity was still unknown. She was there in spirit, honored as Buffalo Woman, but she could not yet be named. That changed in 2025. After DNA confirmed Buffalo Woman was Ashlee Shingoose, Manitoba's Court of King's Bench allowed something rarely seen, a special victim impact hearing held almost a year after the conviction. On August 15, 2025, Ashlee's family finally stood in court and spoke in her name. Her father, Albert, carried an eagle feather as he addressed the judge. His voice shook with both grief and anger. He said simply, "I want an eye for an eye." Not a threat, but a raw cry for justice from a man who had waited 3 years to speak for his daughter. Her mother, Teresa, also spoke. She told the court, "She was such a loving person. She had her flaws, but she loved her children dearly. We will never stop loving her. We will never stop missing her." Through tears, she added, For 3 years, she was known as Buffalo Woman. Today I stand here and say her name, Ashlee. Ashlee's cousin described the silence her absence left behind. She said, "We thought of her every day, even when the world didn't know her name. Now that we can speak it, it feels like we have her back, but only in spirit." A community advocate who sat with the family reminded the court that Ashlee's story was not hers alone. She said, "When we say Ashlee's name, we also speak for the countless other women still waiting to be brought home." Chief Justice Glenn Joyal acknowledged how unusual the proceeding was. Victim impact statements are normally given at sentencing, not a year later. But this case was different. He said the hearing was meant to give Ashlee's family the recognition they were denied when the trial unfolded without her name attached. In that courtroom, a red ribbon dress hung on a chair. A buffalo headdress, a feather, and tobacco were placed beside it. They stood as symbols of her presence, marking the seat Ashlee herself could not fill. For her family and community, this moment was about more than justice. It was about restoration. They had spoken her name, they had told her story, and the system, if only for a moment, had listened. But even as the court gave space for words, another fight was still unfolding beyond its walls, the fight to bring Ashlee home. When police confirmed in March 2025 that Buffalo Woman was Ashlee Shingoose, they also revealed something more devastating. They believed her remains had been taken to the Brady Road landfill south of Winnipeg, discarded in a garbage bin, then carried away with the city's refuse. For her family, that knowledge became a new call to action. The demand was simple: bring her home. Her parents stood before cameras, repeating the same message. Their daughter was not waste, not debris. She was Ashlee, and she deserved to be returned to her people. But Brady Road was not the first landfill to become sacred ground in this tragedy. Months earlier, search teams at the Prairie Green landfill north of Winnipeg had recovered remains of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron. That success proved what many had said from the beginning. Recovery was possible. It was difficult, it was painful, but it could be done. By August 2025, Premier Wab Kinew announced a pilot project at Brady Road, a test phase to study conditions, train searchers, and determine how to safely excavate the site. Specialized equipment, ground-penetrating radar, and GPS data from garbage trucks were all part of the plan. It was only a beginning. But for Ashlee's family, even the beginning mattered. Every step brought them closer to the possibility of ceremony, of closure, of bringing their daughter home. This wasn't just about evidence. It was about dignity. It was about honoring the life of a woman whose final resting place should never have been a landfill. And as Ashlee's family and community pressed forward, her story became part of something larger, a struggle that stretched beyond one case into the heart of a national crisis. Ashlee Shingoose's story is one of love and loss, of resilience and grief. She was a daughter, a mother, a woman remembered first as Buffalo Woman, and finally restored to her name. Her family continues to wait for the day she can be brought home from the Brady Road landfill. Until then, her memory lives on in their voices, in their ceremonies, and in the communities who refuse to let her be forgotten. That was the story of Ashlee Shingoose. And as we've said before on Northern Dark, it's never just one story.
Right. Ashlee's case is part of something so much bigger, something families have been fighting to bring attention to for decades. The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls called it a crisis, and this case shows us why.
And what really stays with me is how, even before Ashlee was identified, community elders stepped in. They gave her the name Buffalo Woman. That ceremony gave her dignity when the system left her nameless.
And after that, it became a rallying point. People carried Buffalo Woman's name at marches, at vigils, in calls for justice. It shows the power of naming, of ceremony, how it can resist erasure.
It also exposes the failures, though. Police hesitations, government inaction, families searching on their own. Ashlee's father, Albert, said he felt he should always be out there looking for her. And that really says it all.
And it connects to the landfill searches too. The fact that families even had to beg for those searches tells us how deep the failures go.
Exactly. Families are often told to wait, to be patient. But when a daughter or sister is missing, waiting means losing time you can't get back.
And governments only seemed to act when public pressure became impossible to ignore. In fact, when police first admitted Ashlee's remains were likely at Brady Road, officials initially resisted any search, citing cost and safety concerns. It was only after marches, vigils, and international attention that the province announced a pilot project to begin the work.
And that mirrors what happened in Ottawa, too. Indigenous MPs Leah Gazan and Nikki Ashton called for an emergency debate in Parliament after these murders were uncovered. They wanted a full discussion on the violence facing Indigenous women. That debate was denied.
Denied. While families were burying their loved ones, that silence from the political system, that lack of urgency from police, it's part of the crisis the inquiry named: genocide against Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. It's very frustrating to think that these families are left to feel hopeless.
It's beyond frustrating. The process punishes the victims' families rather than feeling like an ally for their missing child. And the families are forced to carry the burden. They fight for searches, they fight for hearings, they fight for attention. And through it all, they're grieving.
Which is why remembering Ashlee matters so much. Her story forces us to look at those failures, and hopefully it pushes change, because the families shouldn't have to fight like this every time.
If you've been moved by Ashlee's story, one way you can help is by supporting this podcast. Every listen, every share, every follow helps us bring these stories to light. And we want to thank you for your continued support, because it truly makes a difference.
You can listen to Northern Dark on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Follow us, share the episodes, and help keep these stories alive. And you can find us on X and YouTube at Northern Dark TCC.
Thank you for listening to Northern Dark True Canadian Crime. We will be back next Monday with a new episode. Until then, take care of each other.